Hey there everyone, it's been a little while, but since we're back from America, I can get back into seeing a movie and talking about it. You might notice that this isn't where I normally shoot these videos. That's because I had an issue with my booking to see the ticket, so I had to watch it at a later time, which meant I couldn't get it done while I was down in Wellington, so we're filming up here in my dorm room. And just before we get into it, once again, here is your spoiler warning for the creator. So the creator is set about 40 years from now, in a world with very, very advanced AI and technology. A basic rundown is that recently the AI detonated a nuke in Los Angeles, causing the Western world to ban AI entirely. The Eastern world, more specifically the continent of New Asia, does not share the sentiment and continues to back up the AI in their war against America, because America is now planning to exterminate all AI. We follow a soldier who was placed undercover about 5 years before the main story takes place, who was not told when plans changed, which caused his wife and unborn child to be killed and him to more or less lose the memory of the event. Long story short, he gets brought back in to conduct a mission to collect a super weapon that the AI have been developing. It turns out that that AI is a child that they have created, and then in classic fashion, the hard-ass protagonist forms a bond with the child as they travel across the country. The first thing that I want to say is that I actually loved the aesthetic of this movie. An important part of science fiction is deciding on your look and being consistent with it. I think they hit the nail on the head in this aspect, honestly. Also, a touch that I liked was that it felt like a reasonable step into the future, especially for only being like 40 years into the future. Though obviously we won't know what the future will look like, I'm getting reasonably tired of either the slick chrome aesthetic or the dark dystopian cities are all in ruins aesthetic, which seems to be the two main options that people have when writing for a future. This film, however, kind of just adds its technology onto our current world in a way that it makes it really just feel like a natural progression, which I adored. I think the costume design was also on point in this film, especially when the army comes in towards the end of the film and their uniforms look almost identical to the robots that they are trying to exterminate, which really drives home the point that the film is trying to make, that these two groups are one and the same at this point, though America just refuses to admit it. Although one thing that I do want to say is that the start of the film was presented as if it was being shown through like mid-2000s footage with this technology, which really made me kind of wonder when this was supposed to be set. And then we get a gear card telling us it's like 2060 something, 2065, whatever. And then that made me wonder why news footage or advertisement footage from seemingly about 15 to 20 years before this part of the story looked like it was from the mid-2000s when it should be from about the 2040s. Which just kind of, I get it's a stylistic choice, but it was kind of strange. Sound was also exceptional in this film, especially when it came to some of the bigger moments, because sound really needs to engross the viewer into the film, and I think that this did it really, really, really well. Every missile strike, every sound a ship made, it just felt so perfect in terms of sound design. Even sounds that we don't know exist yet, or sounds that of things that we don't know what they would sound like, sounded cool. That's the best way to describe it. It sounded cool and I liked it. One thing that kept throwing me for a bit of a loop in the film was what language the cast in the continent of New Asia was supposed to be speaking. Like, the actual spoken language was a bit of a mix. Like, from what I could hear, it was mostly Mandarin, but then a couple of characters towards the end spoke Japanese. There might have been a couple of other languages in there, but I couldn't quite hear the distinction. What threw me the most, though, was that all of the written language that I could identify was in Japanese, even in areas where no characters actually spoke Japanese on screen. The most blatant case of this is in a scene towards the start of the film where they are raiding a compound where everyone speaks Mandarin. So this is a Chinese compound, but all of the equipment, all of the signage, all of the labels, everything is in Japanese, and all specifically in Japanese, by the way. I know there's a kanji overlap between Mandarin and Japanese because, hey, I study Japanese, but there were very specific signs of it being Japanese language, especially using katakana in the things which Mandarin does not use. You could argue that because of this kanji overlap that some of the signs around the world were in Mandarin as opposed to Japanese, but when the whole stylistic titles of the film are also in Japanese, you kind of just get the feeling that it's supposed to be Japanese and not Mandarin. Like, for example, every title that comes up on screen and the stylistic parts of the credits, they all are in English first, and then their subtitle is in Japanese. So Japanese is supposed to be a very important part of the film. It makes me think that all the written language is going to be Japanese. And then only a couple of characters spoke Japanese. It wasn't until a character that I recognised was being played by a Japanese actor came on screen, and then I listened to him, and yeah, he definitely spoke Japanese. Which kind of makes me think that they wrote the script in English and then handed it to the actors who spoke English as a second language or spoke an Asian language, and then just said, say this in your language. Which, sure, that works. It's a continent of New Asia. There's a lot of Asian cultures in there. But they could have just used more varied forms of Asian writing. Just one sign that was in Korean, for example, would have immediately taken away this point for me. I was like, okay, this is completely multicultural, but the way it stands, it kind of feels like all of the languages stayed the same, but they just use Japanese as their universal written language, which doesn't quite make sense. The grizzled man meets child trope is pretty played out, but it's a classic, and it was done well in this film, so I've got no real complaints about it. I think both actors pulled it off really well, and there were some moments together where I actually got quite emotional in the theatre watching it, which is good. I never actually expected our main character to not make it to the end of the film, although now that I think about it, that is also kind of a trope of these films. It's like a sub-trope of the grizzled older person with the child, like Heaven and Logan, for example. But it was a nice moment anyway, so. Overall, I think this film's a good watch. At least for me, I enjoyed it. And honestly, I had to get a little nitpicky to find some of the details that I didn't like, so I think that's pretty solid in that case. I don't think it's a must-watch film of the century type thing, nothing outstanding, but it was really quite enjoyable. And if you're a fan of sci-fi or anything like that, you should definitely go watch the movie. And that's really all I've got to say about the creator. If you liked the video, make sure you leave a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel. All of that helps us out a lot. You can also subscribe to our Patreon by going to the link in the description below, where you get access to some extra content like these reviews a little bit early, and executive producer level patrons get their names put right here at the end of our videos and in our credits. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.